Hello, I'm Mary Jo Faustgen. Today I'm bringing you a new webinar called Breaking Free of Habits You Don't Want and Breaking in Habits That You Do Want. And I'm hoping you'll enjoy it. I'm hoping you'll enjoy listening to what I've kind of dug up and researched. It's been very interesting. I've learned a lot actually as I've done this. So I want to get right to it. The resources I'm going to suggest for you that I used in preparing this, I found some articles on the web pages of Scientific American, Science Direct, MIT News, and there's some really good books I would suggest, one called The Power of Habit, and the other one, The Neuroscience, is the one that I've used for my certificate in neuroscience that I've gotten from Duke University. It's a wonderful book, and the course that I took through Coursera was from Dr. Leonard White. Very interesting and very complex and very intriguing to look at all of those pieces and parts of the brain that are involved in our daily life. What we'll be talking about today, number one, the fact that habits are deeply ingrained in the brain. We all know that, but I'm going to show you a little bit about the neuroscience involved with that. And we'll be kind of exploring some different types of habits and how to change a habit and the pitfalls and the possibilities that I would like you to consider. As you probably heard the old expression, old habits die hard. And I guess this was even a recording by the Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger. And I listened to it. It's very interesting, but I'm going to be talking about a little bit more in depth. But definitely old habits that we have, no matter what they are, tend to die very hard. And we'll explore why. This is an interesting statistic. Duke University found that over 40% of our daily actions are directed by habit, not conscious thought. Isn't that interesting? And so, you know, what we might need to do is put a little bit more of the conscious thought in our habits and our daily life. And so we're going to be exploring how to do that. And this is a wonderful diagram about some of the things I'm going to be talking about. Before I forget it, I'm going to be looking at the inset, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. This is it's a pretty good diagram of what are called medium spiny nerves. And these are the ones that are in the particular areas that we're going to be talking about today. In particular, they are in the caudate nucleus, and that's the green part in the middle here that you're seeing, and the putamen. And those are directly related to habits. I wish we could talk about the pretty aqua-colored things here, the lateral ventricles. I just love that color. It's my favorite color, actually. But those are just fluid-filled areas of the brain. That's where the spinal fluid is. We're not going to be talking about those. But underneath that is what's called the basal ganglia. And there's a caudate nucleus, which is kind of that C-shaped green part underneath the aqua part. The putamen and globus pallidus are underneath that, kind of the big round area underneath that. There's two other parts to the basal ganglia that are not labeled here, but they are important too. We will not be discussing those very much. On the bottom right of this diagram, the limbic system I talked about before, the hippocampus. I will be doing a seminar, webinar soon on memory, and that's what the hippocampus is known for. Amygdala is very important for emotion, especially fear and anger, and I've done webinars based on that as well. The cerebellum has to do with moderation of movement and balance, things like that. And the brainstem has to do with a lot of the same things. A lot of the relays from the brain go through the brainstem into the spinal cord and down into the body. On the left bottom, you will see what's labeled as the diencephalon. The thalamus is what we're going to be talking about just briefly today. That little tiny aqua-colored round shape to the left of the caudate and the putamen. And then you see, of course, all around will be the cerebral hemispheres. The cortex will be important for us to talk about. So that's the covering of the brain. And there's just so much to do with the cortex that we will be talking about as well. I'm going to go back, actually, because I want to be a little bit more explicit as I'm talking about the brain and the neuroscience, because it's just so interesting. And so the inputs come from the frontal cortex, this part of the brain. So it's the left side of that diagram. And the inputs from the cortex go into the medium spiny nerves of the basal ganglia, of the caudate and the putamen. Then it goes down into the other parts of the basal ganglia that are not labeled here. Then it goes to the thalamus, and then up to the motor area of the cortex, up near the top of the head. And that is where the movement is initiated and or stopped. But there's another area of the brain that has just recently been found, actually it's in 2012. And that area is called the infralimbic cortex. And it's not labeled here, but I think it's down toward the bottom of the brain. See where the limbic system is. Infra means below, so it's below that limbic system, somewhere in the cortex. And that infralimbic cortex is very important because that's where they found that has a lot to do also with the initiation and the termination of habits. So very interesting that, as we progress in our progress of learning about the brain, we're learning so much more. But what's also interesting is that the inputs to all these parts that I'm talking about are either excitatory or inhibitory. And so it's even more intriguing when you get a disinhibition, which is an inhibition of an inhibitory stimulus. And so then you've actually got an excitatory stimulus going on. And so the nerve then is excited into action. Very complex, all of this is. What they've also found is that when you form a new habit, the old habit doesn't necessarily go away. What it does is it's masked by the new habit. And that's why we have to be very careful of the fact that that old habit can come back. It's still wired into the brain, even when we don't get a benefit from it. That's one of the cautions I'm going to give you today. So to be aware that the old habits are not forgotten, okay? I'm sure the hippocampus is remembering, but we're trying to mask it. We're trying to form those new habits by an act of the will, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So lots of different habits that you can form. I'm sure you have some, maybe one or two, less desired habits that may be listed here. Maybe you have others that aren't listed here. And then there's the desired habits that we all want: the good nutrition, daily exercise, flossing of your teeth, and being clean and organized and timely, and managing our anger, and less screen time. All those things we all kind of know we need, but it's about actually doing them. The ones that I've labeled with little stars here will be concentrating on as examples of, how to stop some and how to start some new ones. So let's get started on that. The first thing that needs to happen, though, is that you need to decide. You need to discern what habits that you have now you want to keep. And that might just take a couple minutes. Okay, I do this, I do that. I want to keep those habits. Those are good habits. But which ones do you want to lose? Which ones do you want to get rid of because they've either had some sort of negative effect in your life or you're just plain sick of them? One or the other. There might be a reason. We're going to talk about that too. What habits would you like to start? Okay, so there's lots of different possibilities here, but these are parts that you need to be able to think about and really kind of process in your own self. What do you want to do? And here you go. This is an important piece. What needs to happen, we need to be able to use that prefrontal cortex that's very important in making decisions and planning and not only planning, but also in working things through. But you have to be able to discern that and be able to decide on what you want to do. So in order to stop a habit, let's take stress eating, okay? First of all, you need to be aware. When do you tend to stress eat? Do you tend to stress eat after you come home from work? Or in between on, maybe you've got calls all day long and you're just munching and munching on snacks and stuff all during the day. What are your triggers? Maybe you see donuts like these. I mean, every time I look at something like this, I want to go have a donut. So when I see them, I'm very visual. So if I see something, I want it. Be careful of having these things out on your counter, in your refrigerator, in your cupboard, because these are just triggers for us, okay? What is your motivation to stop stress eating? Have you gained a lot of weight? As the doctor said, there's just something you have to do because, yes, you're having trouble moving around because you've got extra weight. When I see donuts, I also think of the old commercial, if you remember, where the guy walks around with a donut around his waist. That's just what it feels like, at least to me. So that's kind of a motivation. I want to look better. What is your motivation? You need to find it. And I've always said in all my webinars, you need to have enough motivation, not just 50%. To stop a habit you've had for a while, you need 75, 80%, 90%, maybe even 100% motivation to get rid of that habit because it's going to be hard. And it's also an act of the will. You have to be able to say, I'm going to do this. It's not just, I should do this. It's not just, well, I could do it. I will do it. I will do this. That's an act of the will. What am I going to do to put this into place? What steps am I going to take to put this into place? It takes determination, self-control, persistence, patience. It takes all of those, maybe every day, so that you can get this habit down, okay? And you have to fight the excuses. Oh, I can't do it. I deserve a treat. I deserve a donut. I deserve a cookie. I deserve 5 cookies. What do you say to yourself that gets you into trouble? Okay, so fight those excuses. To start a habit like daily exercise, let's talk about that. So first of all, self-awareness. Am I capable of doing daily exercise? Is my body in shape enough to be able to do at least a little bit of walking a day? If you're not very capable, maybe you have a cane, maybe you have a rollator, you can still use that, okay, to get some exercise, some movement during the day. Whatever and some people are lucky, they can run, some people, can do lots of exercise, some of us cannot. So what are you capable of doing? You need to be honest with yourself about your capability. Is it feasible for me to put it in my daily schedule? Feasibility would be, okay, how can I carve this into my schedule? I've already carved out family time. I've carved out time for myself. I've carved out time for work. I've carved out time for faith practices. Can I carve out a little bit of time for exercise? Okay, if I work hard at it, maybe I can. Yes, it is feasible if you work at it. Okay, and again, what's your motivation? And do you have enough motivation to do enough exercise to help your body? And it's also an important piece that exercise is known to help depression, anxiety, as well as a lot of other things. Not only your body, but your psyche, your psychological, the psychological piece of your body. It also helps in your self-esteem because you know you're taking care of yourself. You know you're doing something good for yourself. This is also an act of the will. It's not just a should. I should do this. Yeah, I should do that. Yeah, I could do it, but fight those excuses. I'm too tired. I don't have the time. You need to get to that. I will do it. How can I do it? What steps do I need to take to do it? I will have that determination. I will have that self-control. I can go out and exercise before I eat. I can go out and exercise before I go to work. I can get up early and I can go to the gym. It takes patience, it takes persistence, but you can do it. Maybe you can't do it daily, but maybe you can do it 3 times a week. What can you do? It will be good for you if you can start this habit. Okay. Next. So to use the prefrontal cortex to stop the habit maybe of excess alcohol. Let's talk about that. First of all, self-awareness again. When do I tend to take more alcohol than I need or than I really should have? Is it when I'm out with the guys? Is it when I'm out with the girls? Is it some sort of social setting, wedding, funeral? What is it? What are my triggers? Is it stress? Is it depression? What triggers me into wanting to drink? Is it, hey, I like it. Okay, so maybe you like it, but can you control it? If you want to stop a habit of using excess alcohol, it's about what can I do to control it? Do you need to go to AA? Do you need to go into some sort of program that will help you to control it? Do you need medication to help you control it? And what is your motivation? Are you losing your wife or your husband or your partner? Has somebody said, you know what? I don't like you when you drink too much. You're too angry, or you're too quiet, or you just go to sleep. Maybe there's a motivation that's external, like I just talked about, or maybe it's internal. Maybe you know you take on too much alcohol and you've already been maybe having some trouble on the road. Maybe you had a DUI or a DWI or several DWIs. Maybe you've had some car crashes. Maybe that's going to motivate you. Or maybe your doctor is saying, you know what, your liver is really suffering here. You need to be able to change your habit of too much alcohol. What's your motivation? Do you have enough motivation to stop? Do you have enough help to stop or to cut back? And again, it's an act of the will. I will do it, not just I should do it or I could do it. What are you going to take? What kind of steps are you going to take? Again, it's going to take a lot of self-control, which is an important piece of life in a lot of different areas. It's going to take determination, persistence, patience. It's going to take all of that, and that is possible to do, okay? But you need to fight those excuses. Oh, I can't do it. I deserve a drink. I've had a hard day. I just want one. If that's a trigger for you, and then you start doing more and more and more, and then you can't stop, and you become almost comatose to the point of not knowing how much you're drinking, it's a habit you need to stop or at least curtail. What do you need to do? And then one of my favorite habits to work on is anger management. It's one that, as I did over 20 years of anger management group, I encourage people to realize that it's not something that you can give yourself an excuse of that says, I can't change, because it is possible to change this. It is possible to let go of screaming and yelling at your family or at your boss. Because a lot of times there are built-in motivators in there. In other words, you're losing your family, you're losing relationship with your kids, you're losing your jobs because of your anger. And are you capable? Do you think you are capable of managing your anger? Let me tell you that you are. It is an act of the will. How much desire do you have to do that? Is it just that you want to change, or is there enough motivation because you're saying, I've lost too many people in my life. I've lost too many things in my life. Do you really want to look like this guy that is caricatured here with the anger and the screaming and the frown? You really want to do that? Do you really want to act like that? It's an act of the will. It's not just a should or I could, but I will. And again, it's going to take a lot of self-control, and it's going to take persistence. Patience with yourself. Ask other people to have patience with you, and to have determination to keep going with it. Fight those excuses that say, I can't change, or I'm right, you're wrong, so I'm going to just yell and scream at you until you know that you are wrong, okay? Or I have a right. I have a right to be angry with you. Well, maybe you do have a right, but do you have to yell and scream it? Can you work on controlling your anger, managing your anger, so that it's not screaming and yelling and out of control, let the police get called, all of that? Okay, not a good way to do it, a very destructive way to do your anger. You can do your anger in a different way so that it doesn't control you, okay? So work on starting that habit if you need to. A lot of us do. And that's an important piece for all of us to look at. Beware of those pitfalls. One of the biggest ones is our emotions. The anger that can get in the way of whether it's using excess alcohol or all of those other pieces, the depression that can get into all kinds of habit-forming things. Anxiety, you can start skin picking, you can start having panic attacks at night, you can have insomnia, all of those things that you have formed as a habit, OCD, all kinds of those things. The emotions get in the way of our habits. They can start bad ones, and they can stop us from wanting or willing to change into better habits. And then I've listed automatic motor movements here. And that's, again, the fact that we get into all these automatic movements during the day. And some, the light switch I've got here, the light switch is to remind me to tell you that in about 5 years ago, we had a light switch changed in our bathroom from one wall to the other wall. After 5 years, I still go to the old wall and I try to flip the switch that's not there. Okay, that's an automatic motor movement that I haven't changed. Remember that it can be remembered in the brain. Okay, when I'm very aware of what I'm doing, I can go to the right wall, the wall that's got the light switch, and I can turn it on. But when I'm not, I'm thinking about something else, and I automatically go to the light switch that isn't there anymore. Okay. And how many times do we eat with an automatic motor movement? Okay, we get stressed and we go into the kitchen and we just automatically open the refrigerator. That's an automatic motor movement. And then, of course, we've got the refrigerator open, so that's a trigger. What do I see that's in there that I want to eat? Oh, I want to eat that and that and that. Or eating at a certain time. I eat it, I eat breakfast at 8, I eat lunch at noon, and I eat dinner at 6. Very timed for a lot of us. Or TV, okay. As soon as we get done with work, it's an automatic motor movement. Switch on the TV, switch on the computer. what am I going to watch? Okay. Watch those automatic movements because you want to be able to change the ones that you don't want anymore. And then, of course, there's these automatic negative thoughts that we have, or some people call them ants, automatic negative thoughts, where we say to ourselves, oh, it's too hard. I'm too busy. I'm too tired. It's too late. Again, the excuses, they're automatic. We think them without even thinking. We think them without even thinking. We're not aware of what we're thinking. Isn't that interesting? Okay. So it's easy to backslide. It's easy to go back to that old brain path, the old motor movements. So we have to fight them. It's not easy. I've never said that it's easy to form a new habit, and somebody came up with the idea it takes 21 days. For a lot of us, it takes more than 21 days. For some of us, it takes a shorter amount of time. It's not just 21 days. Somebody came up with that. I don't know who, don't necessarily go by that. It may take a long time, but if you're persistent, if you're determined, you can work it through. And if you lapse, go ahead and get back up. Try it again and again and again until you make that new habit, a new pathway in the brain. Remember the plasticity of the brain. It's an important piece to remember that our brain is not necessarily just hardwired for certain things. We can change up that pathway. That's where all those excitatory pathways and inhibitory pathways can get changed a little bit. Those wonderful medium spiny nerves, they can change. They can change their pathways. They can help us out, okay? There's new challenges for you as you think of new pathways, new habits to form, and new ways to add that dopamine when you get new goals and incentives and the rewards from new goals, new habits that you've formed. That just feels good. And that's where the dopamine comes in. That's the natural dopamine that we have in our system. Remember your motivations. You might need to remind yourself of those motivations every single day and why it's important for you to change. And if you backslide, know that you can always start again. That's the wonderful thing about every new day. We can start again. Be willing to give yourself credit for trying, for any step you're making to make that old habit stop that you don't want, or that new habit that you do want, okay? And keep trying. So we've talked about a lot here. We've talked about the brain chemistry. We've talked about good habits, bad habits, less desired habits, more desired habits, changing, pitfalls, the possibility of lots of things. I'm hoping this has helped you. I'm hoping it gives you just a little bit of incentive to work on those habits that you don't want and to break free of them and to break in new habits. Thank you for joining me today, and please have a good and blessed day.